Welcome back to another episode of Out Cincinnati. This is Melissa, and my friend Chris is on the road again doing interviews as we find out more about the LGBTQ plus community and beyond. Coming up, you'll be hearing from David from OUTReels as he'll tell us about this year's film festival. And we'll also be hearing from LA artist Glass Battles as he'll be presenting a new song right here on Out Cincinnati. We are so thankful for our listeners here on Out Cincinnati. If you'd like to find out more information on how to support our show, you can do so at outcincinnati.com. And if you'd like to contact us, you can look us up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or just shoot us an email at outcincinnati@gmail.com. I'm Melissa, and this is Out Cincinnati, streaming live on radioartifact.com, 91.7 WVXU HD2, and at 1660 AM.
We are talking to Glass Battles. He is a Los Angeles-based singer, songwriter, and producer. Thank you for being on Out Cincinnati.
I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
And so I was reading about your album coming out in the fall. What is the release date? And I guess my main question is, what is Spook Pop for folks who don't know? So it's kind of two questions in one.
Of course. Well, I guess I'll start with Spook Pop. Spook Pop, honestly, it's just like I make a lot of alternative pop stuff. I gravitate towards like minor chords and themes that, I guess, for lack of a better word, have more of like a darker, spooky undertone. And honestly, like I've always felt that like spooky is sort of an umbrella term that like covers a lot of things. Like it's not just like, jack-o'-lanterns and stuff, but it's like, I feel like missed connections with people is kind of spooky. I think reminiscing about things that have passed is sort of like a spooky feeling, and all of that wraps together into kind of like the themes that come in and out of the album, which is, it's called Glitchcraft. It's going to be my debut album, which is just crazy that it's happening. And then October 22nd actually is the release date.
That is really
I just
cool.
got a couple days ago.
So have you got like a vinyl pressing of it yet, or have you had that kind of a oh my gosh moment?
Nothing yet, because we actually just finalized the tracks all together, because I have like the core handful of tracks, and there was a few that I was not sure if I'm going to do a larger release or if I was going to do a couple of separate smaller ones to supplement the album, but ended up all working together. So going to press the vinyl probably within the next week or two, and I have all of my music sent away essentially. So very relieving, and also just kind of like terrifying, because it's like,
Well, because what's in your mind? I mean, have you thought about, are you thinking about the next one already? Have you been thinking about it? I mean, I've never dropped an album, so that's kind of like daunting, it sounds like.
Yeah, it is. I've been in this sort of musical project for a long time, and it's taken many different forms and evolved in different special ways. But this album itself is actually volume 1, because it's going to be the first ever pop trilogy album. So the second one will be out next year in October, actually. So it's kind of like I basically have the next 3 years, or next 2 years, I guess, 2.5 maybe, depending on the third one. I'm like giving away way too much information, but it's just like the process is kind of spoken for the next little bit. So that's why I'm like letting everyone know. I'm like, I will be busy forever. So sorry.
It sounds like a relief, anyways. You know what's coming up. Have you decided on the for Glitchcraft? Have you decided on the cover art, or will you decide, or how does that process go?
Yeah, cover art is done, and that will be out as well. So that'll be a nice. I'm probably going to show that this week or next week. So
can you drop a hint about what that, or can you kind of tell us what your inspiration was for that?
Well, the album itself like centers around the identities, which is these sort of like characters that are like culmination of themes on the album. There's the tempter, the empath, the protector, and the witch. And I guess the best thing I can say without giving away the actual album art is that it's a family affair. So,
okay, that can go a lot of ways, right?
Right.
Any family. So you learned. I read that you learned animation, and that there's something about a video game in the works. and I've seen some of the Instagram posts. I think they're the characters. Can you elaborate on that? That's really cool, and bravo to you for learning that. That's really something.
Sure. I mean, like, it's so the album's called Glitchcraft, like I said too, and the video game will be the same name as well. And that's sort of it's projected to be coming out in the summer of 2020. So I've always sort of had the idea of releasing a video game with this album, just because there's a lot of elements that I think are interactive in a way, and I think that it'd be a really interesting platform for people to get to know Glass Battles outside of just like, I have an album, I have a single, I have a picture, blah blah blah, you know. And I think in the process, I started kind of getting into the development process for the video game last year, like earlier last year, and it's honestly like I taught myself animation not because I need to be in control of everything, but because like it just, my resources are limited as an independent artist, and you know, there's a lot of amazing animators that were available, but you know, to be perfectly honest, like at this stage in my career, I just don't have the financial fluidity to be, you know, self-producing an entire album, recording everything, working through, you know, promotion and content, and then also being able to fund the creation of the video game. So I taught myself the basics of 8-bit animation, and I'm going to be fleshing it out more in the next few months to completion. But at the moment, I'm doing essentially like frame by frame animations for landscapes, and then I do have the characters as well. And then in my video that I just released in September for Septilazine has sort of a closer peek at what's going to kind of come through with the video game. Each song on the album is going to be around in the video game, so there's kind of themes and color schemes and characters that are attached to each song that will be sort of a nice revisit when the summer arrives.
And tell me, Glass Battles, like, what is is a nerd question, as a video game lover that back in the day, are there going to be cheat codes where you can get to different levels? And you know, I don't think that it's Mario.
I don't know. I mean, cheat codes would be lovely. I think I'm working with an amazing programmer right now, but I don't know that cheat codes are going to be a part of it. And I also, to be perfectly honest, I don't think the game is going to be so elaborate that that's going to be necessary. I think it's going to be a ton of fun. It's also going to be relatively straightforward, and I feel like a lot of things, even though I feel like the old Nintendo games were like harder than a lot of the new ones, because there was just sort of like you couldn't jump, you couldn't really do a bunch of stuff. It was like you could move where you could, and that was it.
It took me years to get through Mario. I had to have those codes.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I don't even know if I got through Mario all the way. I know Super Mario Brothers 3, I got pretty close, and then Zelda was my favorite game, and that one, I don't even know if I finished that one either, just because it was my favorite. So I don't think there's going to be any cheat codes, because we'll see. It may be more difficult than I project at the moment, game-wise.
As long as it's winnable, right? It does, that's the more time people spend on the game and more their experience.
For sure.
So what is you're telling me about the multiple hats you wear? What's your formal is your formal training in music, or how did you kind of get started?
Anyways, in terms of training, I'm actually self-taught. Like when it came to production, that was like in 2010, as I'm like aging myself. I think around then was when I started to kind of dip into it, because it was the same thing. Like I knew a lot of people that work with these amazing producers, and at that point it was more of like a pipe dream, because I was like, I would love to do that someday. And then I'm very stubborn when I want to do something, and even if I'm, a little bit impatient as well. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to at least try my hand at it. And I've found that like learning these programs, like I taught myself on Reason, which is a production program, like a really, really old version from back in the day, and then moved over to Logic. And from there, just kind of like songwriting just became sort of a natural thing that accompanied that. And I've always been such a fan of pop music since I was very young, and alternative rock and that kind of thing. So I think my obsession with those two genres kind of blended together pretty easily, which is awesome. And then, that's basically, I guess that's where my specialty skills are now, but it started off as just self-taught, see what I can do, and hopefully it comes out nice.
If you have the ability to learn, there's no reason to not. So that's perfect.
Yeah. I agree. And I think, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think that's a thing that a lot of artists that I know out here could really just utilize. Like, everybody has the ability to learn these things, and I think a lot of people are afraid of doing something that's not going to sound popular. But part of the thing, the music industry has changed so much with digital releases, and I think people don't understand kind of the amount of control that they actually do have over the creation of stuff that they have, and they don't have to follow trends, and they can actually teach themselves and develop a sound that's authentic and unique to them. And, I think everybody has that capacity. Any advice that I give any artist, if I'm rarely asked it, like, is usually just like, you can teach yourself. Like, this is not, you don't have to hire somebody every single time. Obviously you can, and it's amazing to collaborate, but there's a lot of resources you can develop yourself.
Well, you really are handing over part of your creative process when you say, lack of a better term, hire it out. It kind of, it's yours when your hand's in it, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And you don't have to, and that's a lot, part of the reason obviously was being able to finance my own project, which is impossible at that stage and, where I was in my life, just kind of like working odd jobs here and there. But it became like waiting on people's schedule and like waiting for people to get back to you. And I know that there's so many elements to the industry that are just frustrating for artists, like photos and videos and music and production, and studio time is always on somebody else's, watch, and it becomes this thing where you're constantly waiting. You don't really get to like dive in and do things as you, get the idea for them.
You're kind of waiting for your turn, right? It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's the singer's turn to sing, and I did everything else too, so that's perfect. No, that's wonderful. So we're talking to Glass Battles on Out Cincinnati, and I really appreciate you joining us. You talked about digital music and music a little bit ago. How do you listen to music yourself? What I mean is, what platform, and then where do you think that people will experience your music, or in general nowadays? If it's not on radio, where is it?
I think Spotify for me is probably just the most straightforward. I mean, I kind of like will dip into whatever. I like to, because, being an artist, I like to be able to check out the other digital avenues that have supported and released and distributed my music as well, just because I want to give everybody equal airtime. But Spotify seems to be like the most user direct type of thing. So, I mean, and that's me, the way that they combine stuff too. Like, they also have like playlists that they curate for people based on what they listen to and based on what they like. And a lot of those things have been how I've gotten like listener traction, has just been through like, if you like this, you might like Glass Battles type of thing. So I'm like super thankful to Spotify, and I mean everybody, but like they've just sort of put in a lot of different networks for me to be able to reach other people with my music.
And who do you love on Spotify or wherever you grab your music? Who are you listening to now? I'm
actually like, I'm still stuck in like the same spirals of artists that I have been for a while, but my favorite artists that I'm still streaming all the time are Garbage is my favorite band of all time. Like, they always have been. And Goldfrapp, Yona Lee, I really love Kim Petras, and Robin, I guess, and Dragonette. Those are the artists that I kind of like will always be at the top tier of things. So they're the ones that I think influence a lot of what I do. And I think that I've always gravitated towards females in music, just because I think that there's less self-consciousness in terms of like who that they see themselves as artists. I don't, I think women have there's a lot of predilections about women in the industry and what they're supposed to be, and the ones that rebel against that are like the most powerful like creatures on the planet. And I've always, been magnetized by that type of thing.
And what's your take on the music, the industry in general? We've heard a lot of crazy things, at least about the film industry, and then there's crazy stuff everywhere for women being so empowered. And I think about Rihanna, Mariah Carey, all those powerhouses, but then there's the old boys club in music too. How have you experienced the music industry? I mean, has it been like you've seen in the news, for example?
I mean, I think honestly, like, as, a white male, I think I'm always going to have like a element of privilege that it will always be something that I have to acknowledge and understand, like, where my position in the industry is, because I'm not a woman, I'm not a person of color. And I think that women always have the harder time in any industry. And I think that I would like to say that a shift is in the midst of happening, and there's so much of a longer way that we have to go as an industry and as sort of like a creative umbrella for everyone, that I think that it's been interesting and wonderful to see, you know, a decent growth in attention and acknowledgement and understanding of women, people of color, and, you know, even the trans community within the music industry. It's slowly shifting, and I hope it, you know, speeds up for everyone's sake. But I think that
I was going to ask you, like, I spoke to Dionne Warwick a few months ago, and she told me, and I'm not dropping names, she told me, you know, in the 80s, my hairdresser was gay, my driver was gay. What's it like? You know, my point is the LGBT community has always been everywhere, especially in the music community. What's it like for the LGBT community to be in the music industry? Is it kind of like a cool thing to be LGBT and be a musician?
I mean, it's definitely something that has, you know, I think the awareness and cultural acknowledgement has grown. I think that there's, even within the LGBT community, I think that there's a lot of kinks that people are still working out in terms of sort of mutual support and community efforts. And I think that even within LGBT, there are still challenges of reception and awareness. For example, I think that, you know, like a white gay man is always going to kind of be received as sort of the face of part of that community, and it seems to always be highlighted first. And I think that that's definitely an issue and an extreme challenge. And I think that, you know, it depends. There's a lot of media in LGBT that is confusing to me, because I see a lot of articles that gain, you know, thousands and thousands of shares and likes, and it's basically like 12 hot white muscular dudes that are on a calendar for something. But there's a lot of trans artists that are still struggling to find the reception they deserve, because they're amazing artists. And I think that, you know, we have a lot to grow even as this community that's supposed to be all about sort of lifting each other up. We have a lot to learn and adapt to in terms of, you know, the lesbian community, the trans community, the intersectional, the community within a person of color who's also a female or lesbian or trans. And, you know, I think it's a work in progress for sure. But I think that as a whole, the LGBTQIA community has definitely, you know, entered a very moderate zeitgeist of acceptability within the industry in terms of sort of general audiences, and that's nice, but there's definitely a lot more work to do.
And what do you think about the acronym? Because I always try to say LGBT plus, because then if you're leaving off letters or adding letters, does the acronym matter as long as you're being respectful?
I think so. You know, I think that's also something that if there is, like, the way that I've, you know, the things that I've learned over the years, just because the awareness of groups of people is growing, the awareness of, you know, we had talked about pronouns briefly before. As information becomes available, I think it's important and needs to be at the forefront of like showing respect for these communities of people, because if you know it and it exists, even if it doesn't make sense to you or if you're confused, there's so much education that you can take on. But at the, you know, bottom line is, if it exists, like, utilize it. These people need to be represented, and if they feel that, you know, part of an acronym is part of the importance of being represented and acknowledged, then there's definitely, you know, do it, because that's why it's there. And I think that it's, you know, I certainly, as a white gay man, don't get to decide what I think is important for the acronym of a community that I'm a part of. And I'm here to, you know, learn it and evolve and understand, and just be in acceptance of what somebody who identifies a certain way tells me is important to them.
It's really simple when you boil it down. It's about respect and understanding, period.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was reading that you're involved with Music Cares. Now, I've heard about Music Cares. What do they do, and what's your involvement?
Music Cares is a charity that's based around helping recording artists in a time of need. And it's something that I've honestly never really heard about anything quite like it, because it's a big part of the music industry and a big part of being a recording artist in lots of genres, and especially sort of like the confluence of like EDM popularity and a lot of like touring. There's a lot of attachment to the lifestyle of like, you know, partying and sort of like hyper socialization in order to gain popularity. And the charity is based around people that, you know, perhaps fall into a lifestyle that, you know, spirals into living with addiction issues and challenges, and also financial issues. And the charity is based around helping those in need. And I think that's very important, because even if it's not something that an artist utilizes, just knowing that there's a network of people that actually think about that and care about it, because, you know, there's so many, we've had a lot of lives lost in the industry, even in the DJ community and the EDM community over the past handful of years, that have been, you know, quite monumental. And I think that having those avenues is so important, because, you know, you're trying to keep up with an extreme lifestyle in order to, you know, either be perceived as or to feel that you've made it in some sort of a way. And I think addiction and honestly, like financial challenges and issues and mental health challenges, and it's, you know, all of that deserves that extra awareness. I feel like I'm spiraling into babbling, but it's, you know, it's one of those things where it's just a support system that is important, that is rarely talked about, because there's nothing glamorous about talking about, you know, mental health, and there's nothing glamorous about talking about financial issues, and there's nothing glamorous about talking about addiction. And those things are harsh and extremely common realities that I think people would perhaps find ways to suffer less if they understood that they were being supported and acknowledged as well.
Absolutely. And I will post information about Music Cares. It sounds really important to, that is something that people don't think about. People assume, oh, well, he or she's doing fine. It's a signed artist. They must, you know, have endorsements and no problems, and, right, you know, kind of the rosy life. And that's an important thing.
That's a huge part of like promoting yourself as an artist, is that sort of unfortunate social media perception where things, you know, you won't really know until you're walking in their shoes, or if you're lucky enough to be close enough to somebody to where they feel comfortable being able to share those not so, you know, happy parts of their lives. And that, you know, that sucks for an artist to be able to be in a place and not feel like they're even allowed to be honest about the truth about things. But it's like one of those like secret things that we all share, especially artists and people trying to pursue something in this insane industry. Is like, if we all knew that a lot of us are, if not the majority of us, are on the same page in terms of things that we go through, like this process of community within the music industry would be a lot easier to obtain.
Kind of in the same boat, and maybe you should realize it. We're all human. So
yeah, of course. And it's like, if you're creating too, I mean, like the point of the industry is to entertain, and at least in my opinion, and I think that a lot of people like take for granted all this amazing art that's coming from artists in all fields, you know, not just music. And I think that it's nice to have a charity and a version of a network to support the things that we enjoy on a daily basis. Like, there's so much saturation in the music industry of releases of new music, but all of these people, you know, in some respects are working extremely hard to do things to entertain people. And I think that, like, you know, there needs to be, you know, support and awareness for those people. Yeah, I mean, you know, to be frank, yeah.
So tell me, you told me the other day that you were getting ready to go into the studio, and I was like, okay, that's a catchphrase, right? And it was a joke, right? So my point is, when you're getting ready to go into the studio, how do you prepare yourself? You know, what do you do? Do you have a cup of tea? What's your mental process before you go in and create?
I wish I had a lot of something like a prepared answer, being like, oh, I have a hot water with lemon in it. But I mean, the reality is like I'm usually grabbing a Diet Coke from 7-Eleven and like hopping in the car to where I record my vocals, because I'm doing all of the production, mixing, and engineering myself. So this process of creating the album has been very disjointed in a pleasant way, but still very kind of discombobulated, where I'm going to record vocals. Once they're done, I basically put them on a USB, take them home, to my little studio setup, and then I kind of just go through and I've been, chipping away at each song mix-wise and engineering, which is another thing I just, started teaching myself because same reason, like a couple of the songs in the album I've recorded in other studios that are incredible studios with incredible engineers. One of them is Forward Studios, and Tim and Matt are two of the engineers there, and they're so great, and they worked on a few of the earlier tracks with me. Unfortunately, it's just one of those processes where it becomes expensive. Even for them who have like extremely reasonable rates for this kind of thing, like it was just becoming that thing where like factoring in hourly, and I found myself in these amazing studios getting anxiety about the clock ticking. And so I think the positive takeaway right now is that like I can actually sit down with these songs and take my time, and if it gets to a point where I'm not happy with how things sound at my disposal, then I can obviously then take them to people that are perhaps more directly suited to this craft to help me or offer whatever. So it's been nice, but it's been busy, and I don't have a process. I just kind of go in and have a good time, and I stop when I'm done mentally or emotionally, and I keep going if I'm not, and kind of just play it by ear. And that's sort of the whole theme of everything with this album has been like, do what feels good, do what feels authentic, and don't do what doesn't.
And let me ask you, this is kind of a token question. I want to remind people that your record, Glitchcraft, you can find it. Look it up, Spotify, everywhere that music is available. Glass Battles, thank you for being with us. I want to know what you would tell an 18-year-old Glass Battles, or just advice in general. If you could like look at yourself in the face, what would you say?
It's crazy. An 18-year-old Glass Battles before he was Glass Battles. I think I would probably tell myself, I've always been very stubborn. I've always had like an idea, or at least even a fantasy of what I wanted to do with my career or future. I think I would tell myself to stay focused and not be distracted by the myriad of things I've gone through in Los Angeles to adapt to, being a young adult in a crazy city like this. And I think that, everything happens for a reason. The timing of everything is exactly where it needs to be right now. But I would say, get your shit together a little bit and, focus on what's really important to you, and, don't lose confidence, because, this industry is tough. I have dealt with wonderful people. I've dealt with difficult people, and I've had the pleasure of working with wonderful people as well. And a lot of people are going to tell you what they think you're supposed to be as an artist and how you're supposed to do it. And I'm still getting that, every week there's a version of that. And it comes from a place of people wanting to be involved, and a lot of people that, are sort of misjudging their, my abilities in terms of what I can create. So it's just stay focused and continue working, and don't let the shitty people get you down, I guess.
And you can follow Glass Battles on social. It's at Glass Battles everywhere, correct?
Yes, Glass Battles, GlassBattles. That's on Instagram, Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I don't ever use it. And I also rarely use Facebook. It's like Insta's the way to go. If you want to find me, Spotify and Instagram are probably the best avenues to be up to date with everything that's going on. Glitchcraft comes out in October. It is October right now. October 22nd is when Glitchcraft comes out. And so listen to my singles if you'd like, and hopefully I'll see you guys soon.
It is an amazing experience. What I've heard so far, check out Glitchcraft. You can find it wherever music is available. Thank you, Glass Battles, for being on Out Cincinnati.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Christopher. And I can't wait to hear what happens next with you guys.
You're listening to Out Cincinnati on 91.7 WVXU. It's a radio artifact anytime at OutCincinnati.com. David Wolf is the I never got your official title, David. Assistant Festival.
I got Festival Programming Director.
There you go, for OUTReels. And what is the OUTReels Film Festival for people who don't know?
So first of all, you should know. But second of all,
yes, you should.
This is our 9th year. So it's the LGBTQ Film Festival for Cincinnati. So like I said, we've been around for several years. So it's a weekend of films, talkback events and stuff with films about gay, lesbian characters, films made by them, just films about our community, talkbacks there, things like that.
And this goes from a Friday or a Thursday to a Sunday. When are the dates this year?
Yeah, so this year we're doing a little different. It's November 21st through 24th, which is the week before Thanksgiving. So Thursday night, we're kind of having a more fun, kind of lighthearted night to get your weekend started. We have one screening that night, and then 2 screenings Friday night, and then 4 during the all day on Saturday. And then we have one special one on Sunday that's actually separate at a separate location. Most of the films, all of the films are at the Garfield Theater downtown Cincinnati, and then the one Sunday is going to be at the Baker Hunt Art and Cultural Center in Covington.
And what is special about, because that Sunday is usually that's the end on Saturday night. That's the end of it. So you added that this year. What are you screening that day, and what's special about? Well, it's all special. But what's special about that day?
So we had so many films this year that trying to juggle them, fit them all in and stuff, and we just couldn't cut them down. So we had one extra film we couldn't fit in those days. So this one film, it's actually called the really long name, so I'm going to actually look it up.
What is it? The one about First Friday?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the unlikely story of the lesbians of First Friday.
Okay, and that's the one. Okay.
It kind of lent itself to an idea that we thought. So it's a documentary about a group of lesbians in Roanoke, Virginia in the 1970s that got together in very conservative area. So they were all closeted and, weren't really free to be themselves. So in order to kind of get together, they formed this group, and they met the first Friday of every month. So they mainly met like in people's homes for potluck, stuff like that, get-togethers. And so our screening on Sunday, we're actually doing a potluck where the OUTReels committee is going to prepare a potluck for the people that come to the movie. And the director and writer of the documentary is going to be there. She's going to introduce the film. So it's kind of in keeping with that theme of community and being together and, doing something for your community.
And since you have the entire... And by the way, that the potluck, I think y'all are pretty good cooks from what I can remember, at least. When I
we like to eat.
Yes, when I attended before, there was definitely a Michael Chanick approved buffet, if you will, in there. So that's totally worth getting out to see on that Sunday, that extra day with that potluck. So what else, since you have the whole list? What's going to be in the festival. What other specific films are you looking forward to? I'm just kind of scrolling through the list here, and they all look great, but which ones are you definitely, you'll be there and folks should definitely show up?
So I guess just some of the highlights each day. We start Thursday night with Search Engines, which is kind of a fun one, especially since it's exactly 1 week before Thanksgiving. It's a comedy. Connie Stevens is in it, Jolie Fisher, Daphne Zungo from Melrose Place. So it's basically about a family that's forced to celebrate Thanksgiving without their cell phones. Something happens to their Wi-Fi, and they're kind of forced to actually communicate and be together and actually share real time instead of, time on the computer. So it is a comedy, but you can imagine it has some, ideas you can think about what's going on right now just with people and kind of isolation and stuff like that. So it's a good fun.
Does it end well? I mean, that sounds like a fight in my family. All of a sudden, you can't touch your phone. I could see some short.
Well, there's lots of stuff that happens. Yeah, it's a comedy, so there's lots of kind of ups and downs that causes during the day.
And then you have some really good trans representation with Listen, where it's trans actors in trans roles. So that's something that folks always kind of prefer.
Yeah, Listen actually is during our shorts on Saturday. We have a Saturday afternoon. We have, I think there's 8 shorts in that block. Mm-hmm. And Listen is done by Jake Graff, who's one of our favorite filmmakers. They're trans themselves, and from the UK. He had a film, Dawn, several years at our festival, which is still one that I remember to this day. So that's a real neat one. And actually, speaking of that, Friday night, our kind of feature film is Adam, which actually premiered this year at the Sundance Film Festival. And it's, so speaking of trans actors, if you're familiar with MJ Rodriguez, she's in Pose right now.
Okay.
One of the main characters in the series. Yeah,
that's definitely on my list in Netflix to keep watching. That's a good show.
So she's in that. So that's a really good movie. Some people, it's kind of a coming of age. People say kind of a John Hughes-esque type film for the LGBTQ community. It's set in Brooklyn in the early 2000s. And that one actually, before that one, Friday night in the first block, we have first a short called Pride Prom, which is about the first LGBTQ pride at Marquette University in Milwaukee.
Oh, okay.
And then that's followed up with Culture of Silence, being LGBTQ in Catholic schools. And that was actually done, you might have even talked to them or seen that. It debuted here. It was produced by the local GLSEN chapter here in Cincinnati.
And that's the one,
So
the Culture of Silence one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the prom is interesting because Marquette's a big Catholic university.
Yeah, so it's a Jesuit school, so we're hoping, maybe get some folks from Xavier and stuff, interested in maybe coming to that too, and might have some parallels there.
So, David, how do you get people to be interested in film? Say film festival's not my thing, it's not my speed, it's snooty and academic. Why is it important to support LGBT filmmakers in general, to get out on a Saturday and see some great films?
I think we've talked before with you that it's for us, it's all about community, everyone on the committee, and we all have a love of film. So to us, this is kind of a way for that community to, see ourselves represented on film, see stories in our community that we're not familiar with. Some films might make people uncomfortable, but it sparks dialogue. It creates, sometimes it might even create action, but there's definitely something different about watching a film in a theater with people than sitting at home on your couch watching a film. And, we do try to have other things. Like we said, we're having the potluck on Sunday. We have some displays. We're working with your dear friend Phoebe.
Oh,
we're
yes.
working on a display with Ohio Lesbian Archives that will be at the film on Sunday, kind of paralleling that film in the kind of parallel with the lesbian groups here in Cincinnati during the same time period. And, Thursday night, opening night, we're going to have something to kind of keep people downtown before going to the movie, so it's just, I think it's a great way, like you said, to represent community, even while our festival is not going on the rest of the year on Facebook, Instagram, everything, we're constantly trying to promote other groups in the community, other events, establishments, people in our community. So we're all about raising them up. And you talk about filmmakers, the film, The Culture of Silence is a local film. So always like supporting them and encouraging them. During the short block on Saturday, David Beck has a film, The Backup Plan. He was here. He's from Dayton, Ohio, and he was here a few years. He had a film, For Francis, in our festival. So he's back with another one. So.
And these folks, when they can, they show up at these film festivals to hear from people, to participate in discussions afterwards, usually, right? What?
Yeah, so with the potluck on Sunday, Catherine, who's the producer and director of that film, she is going to be here, and hopefully with some other ladies that currently live nearby in Lexington, I believe. hoping they can make it up too. And then actually David plans to be here on Saturday. We have some people from the Culture of Silence. Josh probably, I think, will be here Friday night. Somebody actually from the Pride Prom is going to be here. And then we have a film we didn't talk about yet on Saturday. It's called For They Know Not What They Do. And you might have seen there was another film a couple years ago called For the Bible Tells Me So.
Is this kind of a follow-up?
So this is a follow-up to that film, yeah. And that won lots of awards. I actually saw it on public TV, on CET. And it's a documentary that tells a story about 4 Christian families and how they deal with the discovery that one of their children is either gay or transgendered. So we actually have somebody coming in for that film. We're working with Lighthouse Youth Services to bring that person in, and they're going to have a talk back after that film. That one's on Saturday.
There will be such a good talk after that because, you talk to people who are in the faith, who are in the medical field, who are, they all have a POV on it, and the general POV is just to accept and love, but, we're friends here, and, it's not the rest of the world, so that sounds like something that's definitely not to miss. And then to have Lighthouse there, they can definitely shed some light, and then offer people, information on their services.
Right.
Yeah. And you
so we're excited to partner with them.
You have a lot of. You were at the Incline last time I was at OUTReels, and so what does this change for the Garfield? There's a lot more to do around there, it seems. Are you partnering with bars nearby or restaurants at all?
Yeah, that's the reason we're really excited to be downtown. We actually love the Warsaw Theater at the Incline. Great people to work with. We've had great festivals up there. But right now there's just, a synergy downtown. Lots going on down there. And they reopened a few years ago the Garfield, which was a movie theater years ago when I was younger. Before it was the Shakespeare Theater. And like you said, yeah, it is located, Below Zero is not far, Bar 901 is not far, the Birdcage is on the next block, Queen City Exchange, those are all just within blocks of there. So, we're encouraging people, come down, see a movie, head to a bar after, come to a bar before for drinks, happy hour, come over. There's some restaurants right near there. So, the one concern some people talk about parking. There's plenty of parking. We'll have maps on our Facebook and Instagram page. One right around the corner. It's like $3, I think. So,
that is a problem that's actually gotten easier over the years. I used to go to the Aronoff when I volunteered there, and I would never have an issue, and it's only gotten easier. So if you're gonna park, you're gonna do that $3. Go have a drink and see a film, and then go have a drink after. There's all you gotta do is look at the block to know. I was just looking at it out of the map. There's so much around. And do you find that filmmakers get a different sense? Well, you'll see this year, but you think they'll get a different sense of the city? Feel like they're actually, in downtown when they come to visit?
Well, we hope they'll be able to partake in more of Cincinnati. I feel like in the past, they either got themselves or we would pick them up, take them to the theater and stuff, but it was kind of away from downtown. We're here, we're hoping they get up and they do stuff downtown beforehand and then come over to the theater, or they enjoy some of the museums downtown, the restaurants downtown, just what there is downtown. So, and
that'll be
we're hoping it'll be a good experience for them.
It's perfect to just kind of leave your hotel and go walk 4 or 5, 6 blocks and just and see what's there. I remember other film festivals where once you're downtown, you just, even if you had to drive in and park and you weren't right there, it's just good to explore. Lots of little places open up in that area and lots of changes in there. Definitely more accessible. So what is the cost? People think, for a whole weekend of films, it's got to be, won't be able to touch it. What's the cost, and where can people get passes to see these films?
Yeah, so it's really affordable. We haven't actually raised our price in years. I don't know if we ever have. I think this might be the same. A pass is $50, and that's for all the films Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, which at least 7 blocks. And then the block on Sunday is actually going to pay what, pay what you want, pay what you can type thing. So all the ones that are at the Garfield downtown, it's $50 for a pass, or just an individual block is $12. So tickets are available now. You can go to our website, OUTReels Cincy.org, and it lists the films there. It has descriptions of all the films, kind of a synopsis, a link to buy tickets. There's a separate link to buy weekend passes, so everything's on there.
And I know what definitely gets me excited about a film festival is to go through and watch the trailers for everything on the list. That'll really usually makes me want to see everything on the list, but it makes me feel like I need to, which I end up spending the weekend in the cinema. But it is exciting to see all these, because there's such a variety from the last time I was at OUTReels. You can see folks from different geographical locations, different walks of life. So it's a really cool thing. OUTReelsCincinnati.org. Oh, and I wanted to ask you the history of the festival. When did it? You said 9 years, but where did the name come from, and how did it get started? I know that's kind of a weird thing to ask at the end, but I think the history is cool.
So it actually started in 2012. Chuck Beatty started it. He's still the festival director. And he's involved in filmmaking himself, and he went to other cities, saw the festivals there, and kind of thought, why can't Cincinnati have this? So he came up with the idea, and the first few years it was at the No Theater downtown and over the Rhine area. I've been with the festival since that first year with him, and it was originally had a different name that was based on a publication that was an LGBT publication in Cincinnati at the time, which is no more. And so when we were looking for a new name, OUTReels in Cincinnati, we kind of like the out, and we wanted Cincinnati in the name. And we found out that several years ago, I'm not sure exactly now when, there used to be an OUTReels in Cincinnati for a couple years. I think it lasted 2 years. I'm not sure exactly.
And it was a film festival that existed before?
And it was a film festival, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we actually hadn't planned it that way, but it's kind of neat that we're kind of honoring that as well.
And you could continue something and, continue with that name or a similar name. It's really cool. And so 9 years later, and then there's so much film in Cincinnati. If you just type Film Festival Cincinnati in a search, OUTReels could be the first one you check out, and then there's opportunities throughout the year to see great film. Thank you so much, David, from OUTReels, for being on Out Cincinnati.
Great. Thank you, Chris.
And unfortunately, friends, that wraps it up for another episode of Out Cincinnati. Thanks to our guest, David from OUTReels, and artist from LA, Glass Battles. And thank you for sharing your new song with us. Now, if you're interested in contacting us about being on the show, or just want to shoot us a message, you can contact us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or by email at outcincinnati@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support our show, you can find out more information on how to do that at outcincinnati.com. Now, don't forget, we're here every week at Radio Artifact. You can also catch the podcast version of the show on Apple Podcasts or YouTube. Thanks for listening. I'm Melissa. Chris and I will be back next week. This is Out Cincinnati, streaming live on radioartifact.com, 91.7 WVXU HD2, and at 1660 AM.